Thank you for coming out this morning. So let's start with you telling us your names. You can start first, Delois.
Delois Johnson.
Phyllis Dawkins. My vision of was my grandfather. We all called him Pa. It was Ma and Pa. So my grandfather would have, it was a plow. He had it was a horse. So he plowed the field with the horse. In the daytime, we would see him out because he had, a vast land of, the land. So he would take the horse, hook the plow to the horse, and would be plowing actually the field. And while he did that, my grandmother would be in-house, and they made sure that, at lunchtime, my grandfather would come in, but he stayed out for long hours spent. We had, I think there were 2 horses that we had, and we named them Charlie, and I think
Jim
was their names. And I can remember as a child, my uncle Sonny, who was Calvin, and we called him Sonny, would put me on the horse. But at that time, it didn't have a saddle, and you put a kid on a horse without a saddle, it didn't feel good. So even growing up on a farm with the horses, there was still a fear about, and that could have been what happened at that time, because being placed on a horse without a saddle, it kind of frightened me. So that was something I didn't want to do after that. And Dee was talking about, the raising of the gardens. And I did a story in school once in reference to the forbidden fruit. My grandfather, when we were kids, we had trees, and we had, his house and our house that we lived in, because we lived with our grandparents. There was an upstairs, and the window upstairs, you could almost reach out, and there was a plum tree. So it was a huge plum tree. So we could almost touch that tree. But there were we had apple trees that I called the forbidden fruit, because during the time that we weren't supposed to touch it, actually when we saw little apples going on the tree, we would go up and we would shake them. So my grandparents would see, the tree limbs shaking, and that's when the forbidden fruit came, and we would get chastised because they told us no, they weren't ripe yet. But you don't tell kids that apples aren't ripe yet. We ate them, and sometimes we got stomach aches from eating green apples. So there was a whole apple orchard to the left of the house, and then across the road, my grandfather had the watermelon patch. And again, that was another forbidden area. But when my grandparents weren't looking, we would go down, and my grandfather would mark the X. Those were the ones that you don't touch, because he was gonna pluck them later. But those are the ones that we knew were right. So when they weren't looking, us being kids, we would go down and sometimes help them to open up. So we get chastised for that again, but it didn't matter. And then to the right of that, my grandfather had a beehive. So he made his honey from the beehive. Those were things that we did, and my grandmother, her canning. I can see her in the old kitchen, peeling apples, and us helping to peel the apples, and getting fussed at because we were cutting away a lot of the apples that were good. And she even would take the peels from the apples, and she made what you call marmalade. She didn't throw away anything. Even the rinds from the watermelon was used for. So it was the tomatoes. Tomatoes at she made one, and I think she canned, there was a red, and then she had one that was darkened.
That was the preserved.
That was the preserved ones.
Preserved
And
and
hot
regular.
biscuits, preserves, you name it, we had it. And dinner time, we knew if we were going to get something we didn't like, we knew that either peaches or pears or something that she had in that jar that was going to taste better maybe than what we ate for dinner. So there was always biscuits, and I tried. Still to the day, I can't get my biscuits like my grandmother. They just had a knack for. They didn't measure anything, so we never knew pretty much how much they actually put in. You know, a teaspoon or a cup. They just poured it in, and it however they did it, it turned out. So biscuits, you name it.
Cornbread.
Absolutely, cornbread.
Yeah, the best.
Cornbread that was the best. They made the best cornbread, and I'm grateful to them because today we, my family, bakers. Yes, my mother, she was an awesome baker. So those were some of the things that, growing up on my grandfather's farm and just watching us with the trees, going up into the trees and just doing things as kids. Yeah, kids things. And it was good. It taught us, and kids nowadays have no idea the history or the love that we shared as growing up as a big family on a farm. Nor do they want to now with the tobacco and that sort of thing. I can remember too, my Uncle Woodrow, he had the tractor, and then on the tractor there, you put the plants in, and it was interesting in seeing how you put the plant in and then you look back and it was actually going into the ground. And as the tobacco grew, there were, we dropped the sticks, and of course I wasn't one to spear it because I didn't know how to do that. So I wasn't one to drop sticks, but my cousins were really mischievous. They could even be sometimes mean. They would take the tobacco worms and chase us with the tobacco worms, and that's why today I still have a fear of worms because of growing up and them chasing us with these green little, So I still have that in the back of my head, the tobacco worms with the little antennas and
But all of my grandfather's grandmother, my great-grandparents, aunts and uncles are buried at Brown's Church. They really are.
And I went, my grandparents, my grandfather, I see this old, it must have been an old, 58, 60 years, on Sundays when they went to Brown's Church, I would go with them. And, we called the Aunt Nanny. Aunt Nanny would be on the piano, and there would be like a little old wooden stove, and that they put, firewood in to keep it burning. And the music, back then would sound good to us, but I'm sure it didn't, but Aunt Nanny would bang on the piano, and there's still, things inside of that Brown's Church that I can walk in today and know that Aunt Nanny was sitting over there playing the piano. And then when my grandfather, when after service was done, there was a we called it was a little parish house or whatever, but they had baking. So I would come with my grandparents because my grandmother made pies, and they would have chicken, potato salad.
Yes.
So they would bring it to put it in this little wooden house right next to the church, and we would have after service there would be all kinds of goodies, and that's why I wanted to go with my grandparents.
Everybody went. That was the church until 1952. Biblewood Church on Sixes Road. A lot of the members, some of our family members, left that church and became members of Biblewood Church. But I wouldn't trade my life, all of the things I had to deal with over my life. over my 70, I love saying this, over my 72 years, I wouldn't trade, look, I wouldn't trade anything.
Yeah.
Because, because we we're
became
still happy, our parents taught us well. I mean, if we stray, it's not because they didn't teach us the right way, because they did. That's,
And seeing our mom, the struggles and that sort of thing, made us good women.
yes, it did.
Yeah.